Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this Introduction to 3D Printing workshop. It is a pleasure to have you, and today we will be learning how to use the CAD software, specifically Onshape, and how we can convert those files that we create on Onshape into a file that a 3D printer can read. Now, the reason why 3D printing is so beneficial is that a lot of the limitations of actual manufacturing are lifted since you can get detail on the interior of an object, and also you can get objects that are very rigid or translucent, whatever you're trying to go for. There's a lot of variety of filaments that you can work around with, and there's also a lot of types of designing that you can go with, such as resin printing, direct extrusion, and so on. The capabilities of 3D printing are just expanding as technology keeps developing, and it's really exciting to see where the technology will go in a few years from now. So to start off, I would like to first, once again, thank you for coming and attending this Zoom session, Zoom workshop. Uh, we will be discussing Onshape, which I have pulled up in front of me. I will actually, for those of you that have made an account beforehand, we appreciate it. And I will just be reiterating on how to make an account. So I'm going to click sign in. I do have an account that's not affiliated with the university, but I will be creating one at this moment. So I'm going to go to sign up. It's going to go, you're going to see Onshape Professional, Onshape Education, and Onshape for Makers. Since we are affiliated with the University of Arizona, we're going to go with the education account. Admins, formal. Okay, so Onshape Professional is basically giving you all of the rights and privacy to your documents that you do create. Nobody else can access them. Whereas for Onshape Education, the documents can be shared with other people, and they also go onto a cloud server that is not secure in the sense that other people can look at your designs and recreate them. So if you do create a design and want it to be private, Onshape Professional would also be the way to go, or even Onshape for Makers, and is basically similar in the sense that it's an open source public workspace. And it will have to be verified by the university. So we're going to go to create a free account. Going to enter my first name, and then I'm going to enter my first name, my last name, my email address, my U of A email address. Since we are going with the educational route, I am a student. We are in college or university. Checking this box. I agree to be contacted in relation with Onshape's products and services. So basically, they'll be adding you to an email list, and you will be able to see any of the new products that they create for the education accounts. So I'm going to create an EDU account. School name, it's going to be the University of Arizona. It's the school website, www.arizona.edu. So we go into Onshape, we go into www.arizona.edu. We are located in Tucson, Arizona, the country, United States of America. Graduation year. I'm actually a junior, so I'll be graduating in 2022. Student ID number. Area of study. So since I am a business major, I will be putting in business. 3 for everyone. Purposes. I am age 13 or older and an IT administrator. Okay, I'm agreeing to that. I'm agreeing to this, to use this plan for classes, personal learning, exactly for educational purposes, and I agree to the terms as well as Onshape's terms of use and privacy policy. If you want, you can review those. They do link them right there. It's always good to know what you're signing yourself up for, so just a good habit to develop. I'm not a robot. Thankfully, it recognized it. Oop, forgot to click that one. And then create an account. And you will see I can log in to Alan Rivera at email.arizona.edu. I'm actually going to go check in that email first and the foremost. So going to Gmail. Okay, so now this is going to be the Onshape dashboard. This is where it's going to show you all of your projects that you work with, and it's basically, just exit out of that. It's basically going to be your main HUD that you're going to look at every time you log into Onshape. If I do want to go back to the main menu at any point, this Onshape button will always be here and it will always redirect you back to this page. So right now, what we are going to do is we're going to create a new document. And if you like to keep yourself organized, I would recommend making folders, especially if you're going to have multiple parts inside of that folder. It's a good habit to use, and that way you're not having clusters of different projects surrounding each other. And if you do have to create a file with multiple pieces, you can easily access them. For now, we're only going to be doing one piece. So I'll be opening up a document. We're going to be creating an ear guard. This is actually straying away from what the description says. We were planning on doing a cable organizer originally, but for time purposes and for functionality purposes, we decided to go to an ear guard. It was also very relevant in these times since we are going through COVID-19 pandemic, and we do want everyone to be safe, wearing a mask, and remain healthy. This is actually going to prevent the chafing behind the ear as a result of the masks. So it's going to benefit everyone that wears it. And also, you can easily customize it to your preferences and how you want it to be. So I'm going to make this document. And now it takes you to this area. I'm just going to close all of that for time purposes. You're going to see 3 planes in this main vicinity with a cube that resembles these 3 planes as well. So now if I were to click on the front, it would show me the front plane and solely the front plane. And you can see the intersection of the left plane and the top plane. And now if I want to rotate the screen in any way, I just have to, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, the right plane. So when I click here, it's showing the front plane, the right plane, and the top plane, but only from the front plane's perspective. So if I want to rotate, I right click and I drag, and now it's showing me it in a 3D space and showing me all those planes. So if I want to look at it from a particular angle, I can just go over here and it gives you a bunch of different options to click from. That's the one thing about Onshape that I do enjoy. It is very easy to reorient yourself. So if I want to look at it from the middle of the front, right, and top planes, I would just click on that corner and it shows me it from this perspective. The main one that I would like to work off of is the top plane, especially for especially for this reason, for the ear guard, because you will actually not have to use any supports for this project, and the way it orients it is perfect when we export it over to a slicer. And a slicer is where we convert this file into code that a 3D printer actually understands. So we will be taking this top plane, and we only want to see this top plane because these can kind of get in the way of our visuals. So if you hover over to this little left side where it says features, it shows you all of the planes and actually the origin. The origin is the center of the document and is where you can, which I recommend using the origin to create symmetry, and to make sure that you're keeping your planes aligned and also in the center of the document, so that way when you do export it, there's no offset, and offset can create an issue for a lot of people. So we like to work on the origin and with the main planes if possible. Sometimes you cannot, which is perfectly fine, but it is my preferable choice. So I want to hide this front plane and this right plane since it's kind of obscuring my view of the top plane, and I only want to see this top plane. So I'm going to go over here. I see the front plane and I see the right plane, and there's a little eyeball that pops up once you hover over it. Uh, so basically, this is to hide the plane. So if I click that, the plane disappears and it's out of my view. It's still there. It's still present in the document, and I can click this little eyeball with the eye over it, and it will show it once more. But for now, I'm just going to get rid of those. So now we have just the top plane, and I'm going to reorient it to where the top plane is in my line of view, and it's in a 2 dimension space. So a 3D image, a 3D object is created from a 2D image, and then you add the third dimension, which is height. So basically, you want to learn the length and the width of the object that you're creating, and then add to it the height in order to give it any form of dimension that you, well, any to give it a shape and make it an object that is capable of being printed on a 3D printer rather than an ink printer, which prints words and so forth. So what we would like to do is we would like to learn our tools now. So we have a undo feature, which you can use the Control Z command to undo. And we also have the redo feature as well, which is the Control Y command to use as a hotkey. And to the right of that, we have our sketch, which is going to be the main basis of 3D modeling using this CAD software. Now, with this what this button does is that when I click it, it puts me into a sketch area. So now I have to select a plane to sketch off so that we have a point of reference to refer to. So I'm going to use this top plane as a point of reference. I'm going to click on it, and now all of my sketch options are available to me. All right, and we will go into what a majority of these do, but for now, I'm going to explain the other features outside of the sketch plane. So now to exit the sketch plane, I will hit this X or the check mark, the green check mark. You want to use the green check in order to save what you have done with the sketch. So say I create a line from the origin that goes up and it's 2 inches. Correct? Then I want to save that for this document, and I will hit the green check mark. But say I go back and edit it and I create another line from the origin that's 2.13, correct? Now, I do not want that line anymore. It's not the right measurement, or I just don't feel like I'm going in a direction where I need to be. You can always hit the X and it will get rid of that. And sketch one will be canceled, and it'll be restored to whatever you saved it as with the green check mark. So now we're going to be going through this dashboard. So this dashboard over here, when you're outside of a sketch, is basically what you use to make an object 3D or third dimension. So you have the extrude option, you have the revolve, sweep, loft, and thicken in this one part. And those all have to do with making an object, raising the object z-axis in a certain manner. We're only going to be focusing on the extrude option for these purposes. And then you also have some other features such as the fillet, the chamfer, draft, rib, shell, and hole. And these all affect the object in a certain way. We're not going to be using these for this project in particular, since we're going to just be focusing on extrude and the sketch options, and I do not want to overload everybody with that. So all of these other features are extra buttons to add to the geometry and add to the shape of what you want to produce, but they're not relevant to what we're doing. This is an introduction to 3D printing course, and I would like to incorporate all of these, but it would just take a lot of time in order to do so. So now we're going to be going into the sketch. So right here, I have my first sketch. And also, it may be good to get into the habit of naming your sketches, because once you start seeing sketch 1, sketch 2, sketch 3, sketch 4, you kind of lose out on some detail, and it's not beneficial to you whatsoever, since you're having to go back and refer to it as we'll take the time to look into like, oh, this is the main sketch. Oh, this is a secondary sketch, and this is the sketch with text. You want to make sure that you're easily able to refer to it to decrease the amount of time that you're taking to do a specific design. Speed is very important, but we also want to make sure that we're not missing out on the details. So this is a good practice to kind of take over. So I'm going to call this one the main body because it is going to be the main portion of the ear saver. So I'm going to name it that with enter. I just hit the enter key to save it. And now I'm going to hit edit and I'm back in the sketch mode into the sketch interface. So basically, if I'm going to delete this line, I can just use backspace or delete, whichever is your preference, whichever your keyboard has. Onshape recognizes both, so it's not an issue with that. One thing I did forget to mention, so if you want to move your view of this plane, say I wanted to move it to the right, or if I wanted to move it to the left without necessarily rotating it and being able to see that third dimension, because I want to keep it just so I'm looking at the top without actually rotating it, because then you can actually, it obscures your view of the actual object in a certain way. So it's better, it's always best to look at it from the flat point when you're always starting off. So in order to move it, you actually not control, you use the mouse button and you click into it. On a Mac, I believe it's when you touch it with 3 fingers, but I will double check that. But on PC, you're taking your mouse, you're clicking in, and then you're moving it around, and it does not affect the flat view that you have of this plane. So since we're here, I want to start off for the ear saver with the way it's going to be designed. It will look something like this. And this is what the main ear saver that we will be designing will be looking like. You can customize the text in the middle to your preference. I will teach you how to do that. And we are going to be making this piece and in its entirety right here. So what I want to do is I want to start off with a nice rectangle. And as you can see, right here is the corner rectangle button. And it's to create all rectangles, which is why they give you a little drop-down menu. And I can actually choose to go with a center point rectangle. So that basically just means that wherever I start, wherever I click, I will have a rectangle that is centered onto there, which is perfect for what we're doing right now. Okay, so if I'm going to show you the other one. Okay, this one, you have to delete it through the lines. I'm going to delete that, delete this line as well. And you can actually make it so that you start off, if you do not want to start off in the origin and maintain symmetry in that sense, then you can just do a corner point rectangle, a corner rectangle that starts with a corner point, and then you bring it down to the other corner point, and it makes a rectangle through that. For now, we will be using the center point rectangle. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to click center point rectangle, and I'm going to start off at the origin just to maintain symmetry, because I'd rather work on one half of it mirrored over, which is a function that Onshape allows. It's very easy, intuitive to do. So I want our ear saver to be approximately 7 inches. So if I finish it and I want to change the dimension, if I do not click escape to get out of it, to get out of this menu with the little plus sign that is now as my cursor, which if I were to click into something else, I would make another one, but I do not want to do that. So I click escape. But if I wanted to change the measurement on this rectangle, I'll do it all over again. You can do it right from that main menu when you create it. I'll show you actually 2 ways to do it. So you can change the axis. So that's like, so this length, so lengthwise or widthwise, I can make it so that it's 7 inches by just clicking 7. And since this document is in inches, it will automatically set it to 7 inches. So now this one, it has a white text box around it. And I want to set this one to 1 inch. So then I hit 1 and it automatically does it. Now another way to do this, say I did have an issue, say I accidentally clicked too quickly after creating this circle, like, oh, I accidentally clicked right there, and then I hit escape to exit out of that. It keeps me into main sketch 1, but if I can't really necessarily type in some numbers and change the dimensions of this rectangle because it's set at the moment. But if I go to right here, this little button with the arrow and the 2 lines, it's called the dimension button. It also has a hotkey for D, which means that if I click on this line, it will pull up the dimensions for that line, and that is when I'm able to adjust it. And I can set that to 7 inches, and if I click on this line, it will do the same thing. It'll show me the dimensions, and if I click on 1, I can set it to 1 inch. And now, there we go, we have a beautiful triangle, and rectangle in the middle of our plane, in our top plane. So now I'm going to hit escape to exit out of the tool. So that way it's my main cursor that is there, because if I say I clicked on line and I wanted to create a line, it would keep me in the line tool. So now I'm just making lines that stack off of each other. And I don't want that right now. So I'm going to click all of these. And the way to click multiple objects is just by clicking on it. You don't have to shift click like in other programs. You just click on it and it'll remember the last one that you clicked and then hit delete. So now I have the main base of this model. And what I would like to do is I would like to give it that curved design right there, that it saves some material. It lowers the cost of the print that you're doing, and it kind of adds a sleek design that's very appealing to the eye. So now what I want to do is I want to do it on one side and one side only, so that way it can actually mirror on both sides and have symmetry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take line and I'm going to start at this corner right here. But I don't want this line to matter since I'm using it to line up where I will be putting that curvature. And so I have an inch, and say I want it to come down maybe a quarter of an inch. I set it to right there. I hit 0.25 to make it that length. And you see it adds the dimension to it, and I hit escape to get out of the line tool. And so it does not connect to here. But this line is an actual line, and this document is reading it as a line that matters. And I do not want it to matter since it's only for measurement purposes. So what I will do is I will hit right here where it says construction, and it turns it into a construction line. And this construction line looks like a, how do you call it? It looks like a dotted line in a sense. It doesn't look like a solid line. So basically this is telling you that you have a construction line right here that's a quarter of an inch long. So now what I would like to do is I would like to create another construction line. And now you see when I click on construction line and line, both are highlighted. But when I unclick it, it takes the construction line away. So basically, I want another construction line going widthwise, so that way I can know where I want my spline to go. And I want it to go, let's say, so I have it 7 inches. I want it to go maybe 2 inches on both sides. So that way I have a good amount of room for text. So I'm not going to click another line, but I'm also not going to hit escape because I want to change the dimension of this line relatively quickly. So after I click the line to set where the 1 point is, I click 2, and it sets it to 2 inches on the dot. So now I'm going to hit escape, exit out of there, and now I have my reference of where I want a spline to go. Now a spline is almost like a line where you set 2 points on a plane. The only difference with the spline is that you can change the angle and the curvature of the line. So now that I have my line right here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. By the way, if I did not mention this beforehand, to zoom, you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. What I want to do is I want to take the spline. I'm going to click on spline right here. There's multiple forms of splines, but right now I want to create a spline itself, not a spline point. We will not be reviewing that at the moment. So I'm going to click spline, and I am going to click on the first point after the 2 inches on this axis, on this x-axis. Okay, and then I'm going to click on the dot that I created on this axis and the y-axis. So I'm going to click both of them and it creates a spline. Now you see how the line is being manipulated depending on where I move my cursor. We do not want that at this very moment, but it is very helpful when you are, say, tracing an image or creating an object which requires a bit of curvature. So I'm going to click escape and it's going to set a straight line between the two. Now you're also going to see something that you did not see when we had this this construction line or a regular line created. So let me just create a regular line to show you. So when I create a regular line, you do not see the 2 little white dots, and that's how you can tell the difference between a regular line and a spline. So let me just delete this line really quick. These dots control the curvature that you would like from this very spline, and that's the beauty of splines. I can add curvature to the line depending on how far I drag it to the left or to the right, or how far I drag it up and down. So I want to add a very sleek curvature to it, but I do not want it to be too curved to the point where it's adding a little bit of a of a of variability with the length. So I want to keep this portion relatively straight, but I also want to make it so that this is curved. So it's going to be, I'm eyeballing it as well. So I would say right there is just about fine. So now I'm going to click out of it. Well, not click out of it because it already set the spline. And honestly, I think you could do it with a little bit of tweaking. If you send it to that to that line, the closer you get to the line, the straighter it'll be. So right there looks about good, but I want it to be on both sides and I want it to be facing the other way. So how do you do that without necessarily having to go through this process all over again? Well, Onshape includes a very, very unique way of allowing you to mirror the object. So basically all I have to do is create a line. I prefer construction lines because they get very minimal. They're very minimal and you do not see them when you exit out of the sketch. So I'm going to go from the origin. I set that point and I'm going to go up across the y-axis straight. It doesn't matter the length. And I'm going to hit escape. And I'm going to hit line again with construction. Also, if you would like to know, the hotkeys for line is L and the hotkey for construction is Q. So if I click L, it unclicks it. But then to speed up the workflow, I can just do L and do Q, so that way it's not interrupting. And with this construction line, I'm going to go across the x-axis in order to create symmetry between the x-axis. I'm going to hit escape after that. And now I'm going to use this button right here. You see an object that has a line and then it gets mirrored over in the opposite manner, which is exactly what we need for this line. But first, let me just do something to add a little bit of a sleeker design aspect to it. So this button right here is called the sketch fillet. And say you have a harsh corner, correct? Now this right here, these two lines where they intersect would be considered a harsh corner because it makes a pointed corner. And we want to round that out so that way if it's on your head, it's not digging into your skin and causing an irritation. So I want to make it so that these two are my only lines combined. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool called the trim tool, also has a hotkey of M, and I am going to remove this line that connects from this point to this corner and this line that connects from this point to this corner, since I want this to be the line that takes over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on trim or the hotkey M. I clicked M and then I delete that line. I delete the construction line because I no longer need it. And I will also be deleting this line so that this becomes the line that we work off of. I will also be deleting these two lines, the construction line and the regular line, because I no longer have a use for them. So there we go, and it leaves me with that little point where the corner originally was. That little point is not going to affect the design at all. It's not going to affect the print at all. So you can just leave it there. But if you did want to get rid of it, you can always just click on it and then hit delete, and it gets rid of it. Okay, so now that we have that going, we can now mirror this and make it so that it's an even design and that it's symmetrical in every aspect. But to save a step after we mirror it, I want to use that sketch fillet option that I was talking about to have this corner rounded, since it is a pointy corner and it will be resting on someone's head. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to be clicking on the line that joins the spline. And I accidentally right clicked. And you will see that it'll ask you for an angle. This is an angle. And it shows you the curvature of what you can expect from that particular corner. I don't want the corner to be too rounded, but I also want it to have a little bit of an edge. So I'm going to do 0.15, and basically that is what that's going to look like. If I do 0.25, it exaggerates that a little bit more and brings it in. But I want to have it at 0.15, and the bigger you go, the more it'll exaggerate it in terms of how big it is. And I don't need it to be that big, since this is not a big object by any means. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have this portion done, I'm satisfied with it. It looks great. I want it to happen on this edge now, and I also want it to happen on this edge and this edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the mirror button that I was speaking about earlier. And the reason why we set this line is because it's going to act as the mirror line. So any entity that I click on this side of the plane will be mirrored over and opposite of it. So I'm going to click the mirror line, and then I'm going to click that entity along with the curve, because the software recognizes it as two different entities. And you see it has the same shape, it does the same purpose, and it has the same movement. So now what I would like to do is I would like to use that trim tool to get rid of these corners, since I no longer have use from them like we did beforehand. And we know that these 2 points are 2 inches long and also a quarter of an inch away from where we began. So I'm going to trim that piece. I'm going to trim this piece. I will unclick out of trim or use the hotkey M, and I will click on that dot and delete it because it is no longer necessary. And now we have 1/2 of the mask. So now what we want to do of the ear guard saver. So now what we want to do is we want to have the same happen for over here on this left side, on this left half of the object. So what I will be doing is, since I already made this mirror line, all I have to do is click the mirror function, click the mirror line, click this spline that we want to be reciprocated over here, and the curvature. Do not forget the curvature, or else these points do not connect, and I will show you that. You see how these points do not connect? It does not create a solid object, and we need a solid object. So click the little curvature that we made, and it recognizes it over here as well. All right, so now I'm going to click out of mirror. I will be clicking into trim, or like I said, use the hotkey M. I will be using the hotkey now, just to save a little bit of time and make this go by a little bit quicker. And I will be trimming this line and this line as well. So now I am 3/4 of the way done with my main body. Okay, so I'm just going to do it one more time with the mirror function, and the mirror function actually does not have a hotkey affiliated with it. You can most likely set it, but it might just be a little easier since there's a lot of hotkeys to remember to just click on the actual picture, since you will not be using this function all the time unless you want symmetry among your piece. So I'm going to select the mirror line on the x-axis since I want it to mirror over from over here, and I will be clicking on the spline and the sketch fillet to be mirrored so that I have full symmetry. Okay, and then I'm going to be clicking on trim and trimming those pieces. Okay, so now we have the basic main body of our object, which is beautiful. I'm going to exit out of trim and I'm going to save this sketch. And now I have a 2D sketch, but I want to add the third dimension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the main body of our main body, and I am going to extrude it. And you can see it added a third dimension. Now it made it an inch tall, and that's a bit large for what we're going for. This ear guard, since we want a little bit of flexibility and we also don't want it to be too rigid, we made it, let's see, I'm just going to refer to this extrude. We're going to edit this out. Extrude, edit, and we made it 0.05 inches thick. Since a 3D printer works in millimeters, it's a little bit weird of a conversion, and may be beneficial to start designing in millimeters, but if you do it in inches, I will show you a way. So I want to look at it from this top view, but I want to change this extrusion because it is very thick and we do not need it to be that thick. So I'm going to type in 0.05, and it gives me a nice 3D printable object that will have some flexibility, and we know this from previous prints before, and it will also cover a good portion of the back of your head and allow for a mask to attach very easily. So I'm going to click back onto that plane because I want to just click that. I'm going to rename it main body. I'm going to make them even. Sorry, it's a little OCD, but main body extrude. Okay. And now we are labeling, like I said, for good practice, and we are making sure that this design is where we want it to be. So in the other version, you see that I have these little points of attachment for the mask to hold on to. So it'll stick right in here and then it'll catch on and it'll be under tension. So that way it's pulling outwards and it won't necessarily release. So what I want to do is I want to incorporate that onto the sketch. But now how do I do that? So I'm going to actually suppress this because I want to work off of this flat plane. If I add it to, so say I unsuppress this plane, and I add it to this top, it will only be sitting on this top part, but I do not want that. I want it to be a flush surface all across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suppress this this extrude so that it shows me the sketch once more, and I'm actually going to create a new sketch on top of the top plane as well. So I'm going to click on top, and then I'm going to, the way I designed this shape was I attached a rectangle to a circle, just so I can make it hook a little better. And like I said, put under tension without it having a slip. And also it looks fairly appealing to the eye. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to click on a corner point rectangle. Now I've already made all these measurements in advance, so do not feel as though if you're feeling as though you cannot keep up, just feel free to ask questions during the live workshop. But I want it to be approximately half an inch on one side, and I want it to be, actually, I'm going to make it half an inch all around. So half, oh, that looks a little thick actually, but I want the length to be half an inch. and I want this measurement, which if I click on it, double click on it, it'll allow me to change it if I already have it set. I actually want it to be 0.35 of an inch. Yep, that looks just about right. Now, you can see there's a little gap right here. We actually don't want to have that gap. So if I take this dot, correct, and uh, cut this part out. So if I look into this dot, it's actually in a fixed position because of where it is and the way it's set. It wants to be directly horizontal to this position. And these are called constraints, and they can affect the way a point acts. Now I want it to be a little bit more free flowing, so that way I can just drag it down and have it within the piece and not have to worry about a gap. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click over here where it says show constraints. It shows me the constraint that is placed on this dot, this point right here, and I do not want it. So I want to be able to move this line lower without necessarily having it to be parallel to anything. So this is the parallel constraint, and I want to get rid of that constraint so I can actually move it lower so that it's not parallel to anything. What I'm going to be doing to drop this point while also maintaining the integrity of all these three lines right here, well, maintaining the integrity of these two lines and then changing this one slightly and bringing this one down, is I'm going to hit the transform button, which is over here, and basically it gives me the option for linear pattern, circular pattern, or transform. Right now I want to use transform, so I'm going to click on it and I will be dragging it across this corner right here since that's where I want it to move. I will be clicking on this aspect right here, this little square. I'm going to be dragging it down to where it intersects, to where it removes a gap. I'm going to be letting go of it, hitting the left click away from it, and now I have a little gap since it wanted to maintain the size and the dimension of the half inch that we set before. So a little quick fix. I just have to add a line to connect it. I'm going to do the same thing from over here, and now we have an enclosed area. So what we want to do is we want to hit escape to exit out of that tool because we no longer need to use a triangle function, the rectangle function. And I want to click on the circle now because I want it to have that nice little curvature shape. So what I'm going to be doing is, first I will show you the three types of circles that they allow you to do. They allow you to create an ellipse, which is not a perfect circle, but it definitely allows you to elongate it and manipulate it however you please to get the desired shape that you like. You have a 3-point circle, and you also have a center point circle. For now, we will be using the center point circle. So I'm going to click on center point circle. I would like to start off at this corner and grow it until it reaches just about the opposite corner. So I'm going to leave it a little bit so that way it's easier to click right there. Perfect. So now I'm going to hit escape to exit out of the circle tool. And what I want to create is I want this line to be tangent with the circle. And there's actually a function that allows you to do that. So I click the outside of the circle, and the tangent function is right here, or hotkey of T. So I'm going to click T. I'm going to click the line that I want it to be tangent to, and now it just made it so that it's tangent to that point, and we have a nice shape going on right here. But there's a lot of excess lines that I would like to get rid of, like this one right here, these three right here, since they're no longer a need for it, and I want it to be one solid object. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit escape to get out of the tangent function. I'm going to select the trim tool, and I'm going to start trimming lines. So I trim that top line, this side line, this line at this point, and now the reason why I saved this one for last was that it just created a point that intersected the circle, and made it so that I can trim this point without having any disruption amongst the circle. Say, for example, you were to have started with this, since there is no set point, you would be trimming the entire line. So if I wanted to go to the trim option, Oh, never mind, it creates the point. So completely scratch what I said. It doesn't matter the order that you do it in. Okay, so now I have a circle and I have this nice shape that really allows the mass to sit in here and also provide it to be under tension. But I would like to make, let's say, two of these, since this is a fairly thick option. So what I want to do is I'm going to hit uh, this button over here where the transform was, but I'm going to hit the drop down menu, and you're going to see an option called linear pattern. Now, what this does is it allows me to select this portion of it and enable me to make a pattern of this. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Recording. Okay, so now we have 3 times because it created a pattern. So we have three new of the same object in line as well. They're all on the same. They're all equidistant to each other, and they're all set to be linear. So I actually want 2 for now, right? So I'm going to click right there. I'm going to hit 2, double click right there and hit 2, hit enter. And now I have 2 objects and I can set the distance that they're going to be at. So I can change that distance by either dragging it or I can change the distance by setting it equal to, let's say, 1.115 inches. And that looks just about good to me. So I'm going to left click out of it, and now I have 2 objects. Okay, and remember, this is a construction line, so you will not see this in the sketch. They will not be connected in any manner, and they will be their own part. But now I am only 1/4 of the way done, and I don't want to have to replicate that entire process of making these 2 onto the other side. So what do? Use that mirror function. It comes in super handy and it saves you a bunch of times. So I'm just going to click this mirror line so that it does it onto the right side. And I am going to drag and let go across all of it so that it gets all of it. And now you see, look how well that replicated itself over onto this axis. So I'm going to do the same once more. I'm going to just get out of there just so I can actually click on this line, set this line as my mirror line, so now we can get it across both of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click mirror once more. It's going to give me the select mirror line option. I'm going to use this as my mirror line, and I am just going to highlight this entire portion. Makes life that much easier. And look, we're already done. Went from 1/4 to completely done in that amount of time. Beautiful. So now what I want to do is I want to hit escape, and I just want to make sure that I don't see these constraints since they are overwhelming to look at. So I will not show the constraints. And we have a fairly simple design right here. We could have made these a little bit smaller, so we could have fit a third one in here as we did for over here, but it's not an issue whether you have 2 or 3, it's all preference. So now what I would like to do is, just for design purposes and just so to teach you the uh, linear pattern once more, just to really reinforce and make sure you get it down, I'll be creating a rectangle that goes from here, from this, that basically intersects these 2 holding points, and it goes across into here, and then we can actually make a design in the middle similar to this one that allows for some text. So that way it's more personal to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a center point rectangle. So I'm going to click that little drop down button where that corner rectangle is. I'm going to click on center point. Now center point is going to be the main selection. So what I want to do is I want to line it up with the origin. So I put my cursor on the origin. I don't click on the origin, but I drag it across the origin. And if you stray a little bit away, and you go back to the origin, it'll catch it again. So I want it to be in the middle of it. I'd eyeball it. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'd say right about there. And I want to make it so that it's not splitting the pieces right there. Because if you split it, it's not going to have that structural integrity when it's pulling on it. So I want it to have that structural integrity, but I also want it to look well as well. So I'm going to avoid putting a rectangle in between the center of these 2. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on linear pattern as we did beforehand. And it should be set if you didn't use a transform function or circular pattern, should be set to linear pattern. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to only highlight the rectangle. And now you see there's 3 rectangles that develop, but I only want 2. So I'm going to click on where it says 3 times because that is how many it's set to, and I will set it to 2. And this one seems like it's on the verge of just intersecting this line right here, this imaginary line that we do not want to cross. So I'm going to just extend it out a little bit right there. And if you do not like numbers like that, you can always just set it to 1.1 and it'll be perfect. So I'm going to left click out of there. And now I have 2 rectangles where I want them to be. But I also want them to be on this side. So what are we going to do? Use that trusty mirror function that we have. So I'm going to click mirror. I'm going to click on the mirror line. I'm going to highlight the rectangles and only the rectangles. That's all we need. Actually, I think I might have clicked but I'm going to hit mirror. I'm going to select the mirror line and I'm going to make it so that it's only the rectangles that are copied over onto the other side. And look, beautifully placed as well. This is what doing symmetry, doing symmetrical objects allows for. It allows for a quicker pace and a quicker design option. And now we're at this point. We're almost done. So what I want to do now is I want to connect these so I can give it that nice curve that follows right there. Remember, we did this at 0.15, and that's a curve that we're going to have set. So what am I going to do? I am going to create a line. So I'm going to start a line. I'm going to click on line, and I'm going to start a line from just about over here, but I want it to go horizontally and stay straight. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click out a little bit in front of it. I'm just eyeballing it. Doesn't need to be perfect, but I do want it to maintain that perfect horizontal shape. So we'll create that. Ooh, actually, I do want it to be perfect. So I'm only going to stop at the origin. So that way it is exactly where we want it to be. Right? So I'm going to stop at the origin, and that way it creates symmetry. And like I said, we can just use the mirror option to create that sense of symmetry, even across this plane as well. So I have a line, and I want it to connect with this line. So I'm going to set a spline right here. It's all good. And I want to have that 0.15 curvature that we set just for design purposes, just so it looks really good. I'm going to click on the spline, going to click on that point right there, and I'm going to click on number, double click on the number, and I'm going to set it to 0.15, so it's not too exaggerated. Okay, and then we can also do the same for this side of the spline. So we want to connect it following this shape and following the curvature, so we get a nice shape on the interior. Actually, I want it to go to the origin to maintain symmetry. So I'm gonna just make it parallel, go to the origin, make it horizontal, evenly horizontal. And I'm going to want to add a spline to here, from this line to this line. You can just eyeball it, doesn't need to be perfect. Set that. You can trim this line. So we're using the trim option again. Okay, and hit escape, highlight that point, delete. Okay. I think we're at a pretty solid point now. So from here, what we want to do is we want to add that 0.15 section, that 0.15 curvature to this line that we had on every other one. So we're just going to hit that, and it should remember the 0.15 curvature. So I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to hit OK one more time because we do want it to be 0.5. And there we go. We have the beginning of the middle. But to save some time, I'm going to, and to make it so that it's exactly even, I'm going to highlight this line from this point starting off. Oop, actually, never mind. Blah. I'm going to select the mirror line, so I want it to be mirrored onto that portion as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that as a mirror line. I'm going to click on this spline. I'm going to click on this curve. Then I'm going to click on this line. And now look, we're directly at the origin and we're starting to form the main shape of our mask, of our ear guard protector. So now we just got to get it over onto this portion, onto the right side of it. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to once again click the mirror option to reset the mirror line. I'm going to click mirror. the mirror line, which we want it to be on the right side. So we use a vertical line going down. And I'm going to highlight and drag that portion because I want all of that, all of the blue lines to be mirrored over. So I'm just going to let go and look, mirrors it beautifully. It makes it so that it connects. And I don't want that line there. So what are we going to do? Use our trusty trimming tool and we're going to get rid of it. So it makes an open gap. Okay. So now we have a very, very good looking ear guard saver right here. So I'm going to click the green check mark to save all the changes that we have made. And now look at the way it looks. Looks great. So what I want to do is I'm going to rename this to inner to holding points and inner gap. I could have made them two separate sketches, but I decided to make them one since I was using the linear pattern and I was trying to be a little bit quicker with it. So I'm going to hit enter and now it saves that name. Now I want to unsuppress this and see what it looks like just to get an idea. So I'm going to click on the inside of this object. I'm going to click on the inside of this and do the same for all of them. And we are going to hit extrude. Now it's going to want to extrude it to 1 inch. And like I said, we want it to be connected to this piece and also be flat. So we're going to make it the same extrusion height that we did for the other one, which is 0.05. Hit enter, and it should now be a flat surface. Look at that. And it even hides the sketches once you hit enter. So what we want to do now is create those gaps in the middle. So I'm going to show the sketch by just hovering over it and clicking the little eyeball. And I'm going to click I'm going to suppress this guy real quick just so I can see. I'm going to suppress this guy as well. And then now it shows me solid objects instead of those construction lines. Because once you start extruding a good amount, it starts to make the sketches below extrusion lines. But what I want to do is I want to click this object, and click this object. Okay, and now we have the inner space taken up. And what we want to do is we want to click on extrude, but we want to do, instead of doing add or new solid, we want to remove the solid. So we're just going to click on that and it wants to go down. We got to remember that we're working on the top plane. So we have to make it going up. So that way it takes out material from the top. So you just click on this little arrow here and it goes in the opposite direction. You see how it goes up now? So what we want to do is we want to set it to 0.05 so that it goes through just the pieces that we need. You can make it go through higher, but it doesn't necessarily matter. We're going to hit that little check. We're going to save that. So now it saves this extrude. So I'm going to exit out of this sketch. I'm going to make a new sketch and I want it to be on the top of here so that we can remove that portion again. So I'm going to click on it on the top plane of this sketch. I'm going to hit Control V to paste it. And I'm going to line it up with exactly where I had it beforehand. And as you can see, you can snap it in place. And it snaps in place automatically by aligning the points. So I just release it, I left click, and now it's right where I want it to be. So now what I can do is I'm going to rename this to be, I'm going to rename it over here and call it the inner gap sketch, which is perfect. I'm going to click the green check mark. and I'm going to click it on top of this plane. So basically, by clicking on this plane, I made it set 0.5 inches higher, and that when I remove, it's going to go through. So now I'm going to hit extrude, remove, and you see it makes a hole in the middle of the ear guard saver. So I'm going to hit top so I can see it like there. I'm going to make it 0.05. Like I said, you can keep it at an inch. It doesn't matter. I like to change it to the actual dimensions to make sure that it's the exact width. I mean, the exact height that I want it to remove. And then it makes a gap. All right. So now we have this piece, and it's exactly where we want it to be. We're going to rename this to the inner gap remove. Okay, I'm going to go to this sketch, and I don't need the center portion anymore on that bottom plane. If anything, it's just going to be affecting me negatively, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Oop. Okay. All right, I'm just going to highlight all of it and then hit delete. Okay. Now I'm also going to rename this to just holding points. Sketch. Okay, and then green check mark to save it. But you see, this is the product that we have so far. So what I want to do is I'm going to hit top one more time, make sure that we're still flat. I haven't moved anything. We're going to be creating a sketch that goes across here so we can add some text. And then we'll be done with the design aspect of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on sketch on the top plane, and I'm going to click on this little A that shows up on the sketch toolbar. So I'm going to be making it a little bigger so that I don't want it to line up exactly, so that the letters can overlap into the actual area that I want it to. So I'm going to just eyeball it and just call it right there. That'll be a sufficient amount. Now it gives you the option to write text in. So I'm going to write in 3D floor E. And then I'm going to hit this green check mark, and you can change the font. You can bold it, italicize it, flip it over, flip it horizontal, or flip it vertical. But I just want it to read left to right. So I'm going to do 3D floor E. I'm going to hit the green check mark. I don't need to change the font. And it's going to produce this. That's exactly what I want. So I am going to grab this middle line. I'm going to move it over to where I feel like it's going to be centered above the origin. Almost there, and right there, perfect. Exactly where I need it to be. So now I have a sketch that overlaps into the object and will be a part of it. So now what I want to do is I want to hit the green check. I'm going to rename this to text sketch. So if I ever have to refer back to it, if I ever want to change the text, I can. And I'm going to click, if I hover over here, if I hover over a line, it will highlight the entire text. I want that to happen. And I'm going to hit extrude, and look at that, brings it up an inch, but we only want it to be 0.15, so it's all flush. I mean 0.05, so it's all flush. So, and it automatically moves it to add since it's overlapping. So I'm going to hit 0.5 inches, enter, and now if I hit the green check mark, it makes it all flush, it's all connected, and I have text in the middle. And you can change whatever text you want just by revisiting that text sketch. Okay, and now we have our final piece, and it's all one piece, as you can see. Since we did the extrude add over here and the subtract, we did it as one piece. Looks good, exactly the way I want it to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this parts portion, and I'm going to scroll down to export. And this is so that we can convert it over to the slicer, which I'll be teaching you in a little bit. We're going to name the file ear guard. All right. And I want it to be in STL because that is the main format to change a file to. If I want it to be STL, I'm going to click right there. It's going to give me STL format. You can keep it at binary. We want our units to be in inches because that's what we designed it in. We want our resolution to be fine so that we can get the best quality possible. And we want to save it. Well, I will be saving it to my download folder. You can change it by saying store file in a new tab or by storing it in the download file and in a new tab. But I'll just have it go to my download file. I'm going to hit OK. You'll see a download, and here we have the STL. So once that's downloaded to your PC, you will then transfer it over to the slicer, and a slicer can read it in STL.
Once we have the file located on our SD card, all you have to do is first come around to the back of the printer, turn it on, insert the SD card, press OK. It's going to have to sort the files. Sometimes this can take a little while, but usually no more than 10-15 seconds. Scroll down to our file name, which is going to be earsaver. Press OK. And then the printer is going to have to heat up. This first number is the nozzle temperature. The second number is the bed temperature. This is going to be the percent of the print that is read from the SD card. This is going to be the time remaining, the percentage as to the completion, so 0% would be just starting, and the Z value is how high the extruder is off the bed.